You know, there's a lot of great presenters in the world, but more than half of them are boring. Don't be boring. Watch this video. Let me train you 3 great ways to start out your presentation so you can be a rock star in your next presentation. Hey presenters, I know the reason why you clicked on this is because you give presentations somewhere at some time to some people, right? Well, if you're a presenter and you give presentations, I know you're interested in different ways to start out the presentation. Because when you start out the presentation exactly the same way every time, sooner or later you start to get bored of yourself and you look for some creativity of what to do. But I know that there's that part of you that it's going to take a risk of, is this going to work? Am I going to fail? Am I going to flop? So what are 3 great ways to start a presentation that's always just a hit, right? And I myself, I've given over 5,500 presentations. I know, crazy, right? I do live events, online events, conference calls, webinars, keynote presentations. I just love speaking, and coming from an introvert status, every personality test that I've taken has shown that I'm an introvert, but hey, I can be an extrovert. There's nothing wrong with adding on some characteristics, right? But let me share with you, I got bored of myself after a while, starting out exactly the same all the time. I wanted to have some zing, some zest, some differences that I could choose from. That way, when I'm doing my live events, it's not always exactly the same. And maybe you're this way, but I like to be slightly unpredictable. So that if I have a student go to one class and they're going to go to another class, they can't figure out how I'm going to start the class next. So I don't lose their attention, right? I don't want to lose people's attention. So here's 3 different ways to start a presentation that to me are just golden. And they're just really, really fun. The first one though is this. It's the good old, the very, very beginning, the good old way of starting a presentation is introducing yourself and the topic. Now, when you do this though, when you introduce yourself and your topic at the beginning of your presentation, and you're going to go through the way you're going to explain it, the part that really matters here in this first way of starting a presentation is literally the enthusiasm you have. Most people start this out with a lot of their data dumping. It's like, here's my name, here's the topic, here's what we're covering, this is what we're going to do. And that right there will lose your audience. You know as much as I know that we can't lose the audience within the first 2 to 3 minutes when we start our presentation. We've got to keep them interested. And where the interest comes from is not only from what you say, but literally the energy that you give off. And if you're going to introduce yourself and you have no enthusiasm, what's happening with that? Are you not enthusiastic about who you are and what you can do? And I'm not saying spastic. Enthusiasm and spastic are on other ends of the scale. So you're not trying to reach this spastic state, but you can be enthusiastic about who you are and the fact that you get a chance to teach. Now, especially when you bring up the topic. When you bring up the topic and you're sharing this with the audience, they are going to determine in that moment if you're smart or not by the way you explain the topic. The way your voice backs up the topic. If your voice has a downward turn or if your voice has a scattered sound to it, if your voice doesn't sound confident, well then they're not going to be confident in what you're going to teach them. So when you go to introduce yourself, because number 1 always works. When you go to do this though, be sure that you've practiced at home in front of a camera or on a recorder so you can listen to see if you have some enthusiasm. And if you don't know what enthusiasm sounds like, go find a happy person. Go find a happy person and just listen to them. And practice being like that happy person. Go look online and find videos of people who literally you can tell that they love what they do. That's called enthusiasm, when they love what they do. And if it's tough and difficult and what they're doing and they've lost the enthusiasm, we are in charge of our enthusiasm. Nothing else. we're in charge of our enthusiasm. So number one, if you choose to use number one, be sure you got some enthusiasm in there, or you're gonna sound really boring starting out. And you know, one of the rules in presenting is no boring. You gotta cut that out like crazy. Okay, number two, this one is an absolute blast, is to walk out and start your presentation with a story. Now, every story needs to come to a point, right? It's gotta be able to open up the topic, open up the conversation. But when you decide to tell a story, the part about telling a story that really, really works is if the story can be related to the audience or related to the topic, related to the conversation you have. If it doesn't relate, then the people spend time trying to find the connection. And when they can't put it together, how that story relates to what's going on, and they can't find a connection, they actually back off from you. They kind of pull away from you, because if you can't make that connection, then why should they listen to the rest of what you're going to talk about? So stories can flop. That's why you got to practice. And be sure that the story you choose does relate or connect to the content in which you're sharing with that audience. But I love number two. I love walking out and starting with this story, because everybody thinks you're going to start out like number one. Everybody thinks you're going to walk out, say your name, tell what the topic is. Let's turn to page 4. Let's start with number 1. That's what they expect, because that's the normal presenter out there in the world. But number 2, oh no, that's a little bit of a surprise. You know, it's a little bit of it's an attention getter. It really is an attention getter. And it's a blast to do that, because telling the story helps you actually calm your nerves. And because you get into the story and the dramatics of the story, it helps you calm the nerves, and people instantly listen to a story. People love stories. They love stories. And it actually causes their mind to go, oh good, this is not going to be a boring presenter. Right? Don't be boring. Don't be boring. Okay, but telling a story, super cool, super fun, super cool. But test your stories, practice your stories ahead of time so you don't flop the story. You don't flop the story. Okay, number 3, this one's a little bit more of a bold beginning, a little bit more of a taking a stand. And people quickly learn what you believe in and what you stand for when you start your presentation out talking about a problem. You literally walk out and you literally, at the very beginning of your presentation, you announce the problem. It's an attention getter, but it also can put people on edge. Like, whoa, what are you doing focusing on problems? Most people don't talk about problems. Most people avoid problems. Most people just put problems under the bed, and they put problems in the corner thinking they're going to evaporate. And here you're bringing up a problem. Now, when you start out with a problem and you start to talk, you're going to feel the audience kind of get into this little shaky energy in the room, and it's going to feel a little messy at the beginning. But what you're doing is you're stirring the audience, because people get uncomfortable when somebody brings up a problem. And while they're sitting there being uncomfortable, and they just sat down, so they're not going to get up and leave because they just sat down. But after you talk about the problem and why it's a problem and how long it's been a problem and what we need to do about this problem and what will happen if we don't act on this problem, they're going to be sitting there going, well, what are we supposed to do? And now you got their attention. And now you start to bring up the solution. What number 3 does, what this third idea starting out a presentation, it puts you in expert status immediately. When you can describe a problem and you have no fear about talking about a problem, you have no hesitation about just calling out a problem, and you're talking about this problem, and people are just like, wow, and you're talking about why it's a problem, what is this causing, how long it's been a problem, what are you going to do about this problem? And they're just like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. This girl knows what she's talking about. And then you start to bring in the solutions of what to do. You will see your audience whip out a pad of paper, get their phones out, and start typing messages. And that audience is going to highly respect you. Because most people don't talk about problems. but you got the courage, the guts to do it that way, and to be able to start a presentation out that way, it is a major, major credibility builder. And I'm not kidding. Experts solve problems. Amateurs avoid problems. And because you're willing to talk about a problem, boom, you are expert status. It is so smart to do it that way. So 3 great ways to start a presentation. 3 great ways to start a presentation. I love teaching people about how to give presentations because I think us as teachers and presenters, we change the world. We change one person at a time. We change families, communities, countries, states. We change the leaders. We help people change. I love teaching people how to do presentations. What I think you ought to do is subscribe to this channel. Number 1, so you get all the great content I'm sharing. Number 2, go to my website, look up the program called Present Yourself, and register to attend that class so I can spend 3 powerful days with you in teaching you how to be a great presenter. Because I know you got great content, but come on, let's work on your delivery, right? Let's work on your delivery and let's work on how you start your presentation. Because if you started out like everybody else, then you're just like everybody else and you're just same old as everybody else. Let's help you find your own unique way of delivering your content. But go check out my program called Present Yourself. It's right here in Salt Lake City. Love to see you there. Let's take you to that next level. Subscribe, go check out Present Yourself, and stay close. I got more to share with you because you are a great presenter and you're going to change the world.